Hey there, Chad here. Thanks for joining me. This is NewsTower, and this is our paper, The Sounding Rocket, and we are about to start our first week. Now, in my first episode, we planned out the building that we're starting with anyway. We have 3 floors of this particular tower, and we will make it bigger in the long run, but for now, this is what we have to settle for. We only have $1,700 left in the bank, and the next floor will cost us $5,000. So it's going to be a few weeks before we're able to get that next floor. But at this point, we are ready to start the game engine. We really haven't run any time yet. All I did was build out the tower the way I like it, and we're going to go ahead and start the week now. I'm going to hit space to turn off pause. And you will see the folks start going to work, and right away, these guys start to find stories out on the telegraph. Now, you can speed up time. You can do it by clicking here, but you can also hold tab. And if I hold tab, it'll fast forward until I let go of tab. And I like doing that. We'll see these loops come around and boom, they now have a story ready for us. I'm going to pause when a story comes in so we can talk about it for a minute and so I can make a plan. And we're going to open the globe. The globe shows us the story. It is out here on the coast, and it looks like it's going to be entertainment based. When I click on that, indeed, this is an entertainment story, so I will need an entertainment reporter to report on this. So let's find out about hiring a reporter. We've hired a few of the positions already. We hired the telegraphers, and we hired the assembler and the typesetter. Now it's time for reporters. We can just click on a reporter desk, and that will take us to where we hire them. And these are our options right now. Now, something that was not immediately apparent to me, and I'm starting to realize it probably has existed since the very first time I played and I didn't notice, the reporters are paired up so that the top 2 give you each of the 6 categories that you can work in, and the bottom 2 also give you each of the 6 categories you work in. You're not required to hire people to handle every type of story, but it probably makes sense to be able to cover all 6 story types. So that you can see them, the story types are crime, economics or economy, entertainment. Then we have over here politics, society, and sports. Those are the 6 categories. Now there are some other stories, like later in the game we'll get other desks that will also provide things that are effectively story types, but from our journalist perspective, the actual reporters that are going to go out, that's it, just those 6 stories. We did talk about the special skills or the traits that some reporters will have. I'm sorry, some employees will have, others will not. And in this case, this is resilient. They recover their concentration faster. So when their comfort gets disrupted and it drops down, their concentration will recover faster once we've fixed that. We are seeing 3 different tiers of salary. This is kind of the baseline one. He has 2 skills. He's going to cost $60 per week. These 2 don't have any skills at all, and they're a little cheaper, but he has the trait for resilient, so his is a little higher than Elaine's here. And then Lucille has a skill point and has resiliency, so she is the most expensive of the reporters. And interestingly enough, she has entertainment. I think we're going to go ahead and hire her initially. Let's go with Lucille. I'm going to drop Lucille here. Now, in order to keep things even, it makes entirely perfect sense for me to also hire Elaine, because Elaine has the other 3 reporting skills that Lucille here did not have. So I'd like to go ahead and do that. As I said, we don't have to hire them right away. It does make some sense to wait for another story to come in, except I do want to make sure I cover all of the possibilities. So we're going to drop her here, and I now have a reporter that can cover any of the 6 stories. When we hire our next reporter, we'll probably want to do it because the other reporters are both tied up and cannot get to a story that becomes available, and then we'll basically hire who we need at that point. If it isn't this week, we'll start to get other reporters up here. We also have the option to hit this button for $100. We'll get other recruits. We can do that up to 3 times a week. We don't have a lot of money right now. I'm going to skip doing that since I don't really need to. And let's go ahead and start running things again. So we had run it until we got that first story. We didn't send a reporter to the story though, so we're going to click here to do that. And the Thousands Watch Circus Parade story will need to be handled by Lucille. Now you'll notice Lucille pops up over here because she has the entertainment skill. So we just basically drag her and drop her right here, and she's now assigned to that story. And because she has a skill point in it, the story went from taking 24 hours down to only taking 18 hours. She will get it done faster because she has that skill point. We're going to unpause the game, and I am going to hold down fast forward. Well, no, I'm not, because the story hits right now. When that circle completes, we'll have another story, and there it is. Pausing and opening this. And we have a story that has a couple of different angles to it. We're going to click here and see what that looks like. Okay, this one's a little more complex. First of all, to get to the story at all, we're going to have to buy a ticket. Since it's early in the week, we'll go ahead and buy the $15 ticket, which gives us no bonus. If we wanted to, we could buy, you know what, let's buy the 30 just for fun. What it will do is it will reduce the story time by 6 hours. So we're going to do that. So whichever of these we take will take 6 hours less. So instead of taking a day and a half, they're now only going to take a day and a quarter. We have two options for the story we could report on. We could either report on society, or we could report on the economy. So basically the idea is, which angle are we going to take of the story? This is kind of easy for us to pick this time because Lucille's already out on that entertainment call. We can't use her economy skill to do this. We can't drag her down there. She's not available. So that leaves just this with Elaine, and that makes this a little easier because of that. We don't have to hire another reporter, and we can just use Elaine on it. But one other thing to consider is these icons up here are tags. Now you always have a tag of the story type, like economy or society. There will be other tags. There's lots of other tags. These are bronze tags. We will get silver and gold tags as well. And these are additional, I guess, they're tags. They're additional descriptions of what the story might be about. In this case, it's a tragic story about society. That's kind of interesting. Well, it is the deadliest aviation accident in the U.S. History at this time. So yeah, that's probably a big deal, and it's tragic. The thing is, tags sell papers. The more tags we have on our paper when we run it, the more people will read the paper. So all other things being equal, you want to do stories that have more tags. There is another caveat to that, and that is on a particular page, each page will hold 3 stories. When you match tags, you get bonuses for that. So there are some odd situations where matching tags may be more important than more tags. But in general, again, all other things being equal, go with stories with more tags. So we're going to drag Elaine here, and she's going to report on that. And what you'll see is this was a choice. We had to pick one or the other. So once we placed her here, the choice went away. We no longer have access to this. We could cancel that, and it will reopen this, and we could reassign somebody else if we wanted to, but we don't need to. There are a handful of story types where once you've assigned them, you can't take them off of it, and you won't get your options back. So that's something to consider. There are a couple of other symbols on what can happen here. Sometimes there's 2 branches to a story, and you have to report on both of them. And there's a few other interesting little side kind of games there, I guess, that we can look at as they come up. So let's go ahead and move forward. I'm going to hit space, and I'm going to hold down tab until we get some new news stories coming in. Now, right now, there's just not a lot going on. Each of these folks can hold on to several stories at once. The telegraphers are not one-trick ponies. But right now, there just aren't any other stories coming in. There's 4 items that can be researched, and they'll start to research those in just a few minutes. Here we go. They're starting to kind of pay attention, and there we go. Agnes here is starting to work on another story, and as that fills out, we will see what that story is. There it is. I'm going to pause. We'll open the globe, and she has another society story. Police car explodes on main road. Okay, it's also combined with politics and crime. We can just click on it. We don't have to see that, but this just kind of gives you a quick idea of what you might be dealing with. And I will click on that. This is another interesting decision. First of all, we have to report on the society angle of this, but after that part is done, we'll get a choice to either report on the crime angle or the politics angle of it. Now, right now, I don't have an available reporter. This guy, Lucille, this gal is not available because she doesn't have society, and Elaine is not available because she's currently working another story. Now, we could wait a couple of hours, and I think we're going to go ahead and do that. We're only planning on printing one page of a paper today, or this week, and we already have 2 stories in the works. So we can wait on this story while she finishes up the one she has, and we will assign her once that completes. We do need to be a little careful because time becomes it becomes a commodity. We run out of time by the end of Sunday. The report isn't done. The story isn't ready. We don't get to run it, at least not this week. So I held that down for just a moment, and she switched to her hands are full. The reporter is carrying the item to its production destination. What that means is she's finishing up the story, and she's heading back to the tower, and she's turning it in. We could actually watch that. Here she is. And she's going to go up the stairs, and she's going to come out here, and she's going to walk to... Oh, no, she's going to go straight up to the other... Yeah, there she goes. She's going to straight up to this door, and she's going to hand the story in right here, and he will start working on it. The story is now turned in, and if we pause and come back out here, we will see she should now be available, and she is. We could have just hung out on the screen and held tab until she popped up as available. It will show them as available once they are free. So that is something to know, but we'll drop her here. Now you notice this part of the story has to get completed before we even get a choice of which other part to look at. So this time I am just going to hold tab while we allow her to work it. And we have another news item coming in. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Actually, real quick though, are we paused? We are paused. She has 17 hours left on this story. So roughly at some point on Thursday, she'll be complete and we'll be able to assign the next piece of the story. Once that occurs, that story is going to take another day. So it'll be Thursday to Friday. So Saturday and Sunday are going to be spent doing the assembly and the typesetting on this story more than likely. Just something to be aware of because we have more stories coming in. But the thing is, a couple of ways we can look at this. It is early in the week. We could go ahead and see about working some extra stories just in case we have time to get them typeset and assembled. I don't know if we would have enough time. We don't have a lot of skill points in any of this stuff, so it's taken everybody lots of time to do any of these particular things. But there's a couple of options we have here. We could, well, Elaine is the one who needs to report on this, so we would be waiting anyway. We could wait until Elaine is available, but this up here is telling us that this story will hang around for 4 days. So Wednesday, 1, 2, 3. This story will still be available at this time, roughly this time, on Sunday. Certainly, probably Sunday morning it should still be available. By the way, right now it is, it's 6:30 at night on Wednesday. 4 days from now will be Sunday. It should still be available. We could wait until that point to assign a reporter. The other thing we can do is click this button here, and it'll close the line of communication. The story will go away forever. It allows the telegrapher to work on another story, and they don't hold this line open, so they're not kind of multitasking with the story that is out there. Good and bad in that, we have a decision to make is what it comes down to. I think for now I'm going to wait. I can't send Elaine out anyway. She's on another story. I don't need to send her because I have 3 stories effectively set up this time. Having another society story for that bonus of having the same tag on multiple stories on a page wouldn't be the worst thing. So we'll go ahead and maybe give it a try, but I don't know that it'll get done. Now, one other thing about leaving it until later in the week is once a story is completed, if it doesn't print in that week, the following week it'll hang around, but it'll be labeled as old news. There's some penalties to old news, but you can still use the stories. It doesn't cost you. It's just not as much of a benefit. Fresher news is more important to the folks, so more people will buy the paper when there isn't old news in it. If all you can come up with is old news, there's nothing wrong with that. There are going to be some quests, I guess you can call them, where it says don't print any old news. You would want to avoid it in that circumstance. But again, it's a risk-reward payoff if deciding how you want to play the game and if you would want to print a story like that or not. For now, I don't need to, so we're just going to hold off. Unpaused, and I'm going to hold down tab. You do not have to unpause if you're holding down tab, by the way, and it will. So I'm paused right now, and I'll hold down tab, and then I stop holding down tab. It remains paused at that point. That is a great quality of life. I think that's a change, and I really like that change. Now, you just heard kind of a dunk sound just happened. That is the system telling me that one of my stories that had multiple parts is ready to advance. And we see that over here. New actions possible. So I'm going to click here. I can click on any of this. Right in between. Well, guess we'll click on the folder. Maybe you do have to click right on the folder. This is the story where she was reporting on the society angle, and now we have to decide between politics and crime. Now she's handing in the story right now. She hasn't made it back to the desk, so we can't reassign her to this part of the story yet. I'm kind of leaning that way though. Lucille is going to take as much time, a full day, to do this part of the story. This part of the story has 2 tags, and as we discussed, 2 tags is better than 1 tag. I'm probably going to wait. This should probably take less than an hour or 2 to finish. So if I'm that close on Sunday, well, I just made a bad bet. That's what it comes down to. We're going to go ahead and hold tab. And now Elaine is available. I released it, and we will assign her here, and she's going to go out and take care of that story. The other thing to consider there is Elaine is the person that would be working this story, so it's going to be later in the week. There's no way this story is getting done before the print deadline this time. And again, that's okay because we're going to have 3 stories. We will be fine with just 3 stories this week. It's our first run. Just getting through it is going to be a good thing. So unpausing, and by the way, to close this window, you can click on the globe. You can also just click off of it anywhere else on the screen. Tends to get rid of those kinds of things for you. The same happens over here with these guys. If I click off of it, it goes away. All right. You know, while we're waiting right now, and I could just hold down tab, but I'm going to hold off on that. I want to show one other thing. There's these 3 icons up here. These are for coal, which we don't need right now because we don't have a generator, for paper, and for food. We need to order those things, and they will get delivered to us so that we can load our printer and things like that. Now, initially, we have enough paper for the printer. We don't have to, you know, it's not a complete requirement this first week. It will be for next week, though. So let's go ahead and do it. We're going to order paper. We're going to go ahead and order the maximum, which is 300 units at $2 a unit. And the $2 a unit is consistent. You don't get a discount for more. There are some bonuses you can get in the game later that will decrease the costs, and that's good, but there's really no huge driver for which one we want other than what we can really afford right now. $600 won't crush us. We can go ahead and do that. So we're going to pick that, and I want you to see what happens here. This little truck comes along, and right down here, he's going to stop, and then he's going to unload like 6 boxes of paper. And there they are. Now, if we had a resupply desk employee, which we do not right now, I'm going to pause it. They're bringing that story back in. That's awesome. They would come up from their desk, come down the stairs, pick up a box, and carry it up to the shelves or to one of the machines that needs paper or one of the positions that needs paper. The toilets need paper. Your telegraph needs paper. I think the assembler needs paper. Lots of things need paper. You're going to use a lot of paper. We can also drag these up here on our own. We can drop them in any of those things to get their job done for them. We're just going to drop them here on the shelf. And this is effectively what that employee would do. So this first week, by doing this on our own, we don't need that employee. With that said, the paper can stay down here on the street as long as we want it to. It can rain. It doesn't hurt it. It doesn't get stolen. just leave it alone and it'll sit down here. Now, it won't get loaded into printers. That's why we want the resupply person, so that we don't have to micromanage that. But for now, this first week, we can handle this. The same is true for food, and you might be thinking, well, you don't have food, you have water. Water is considered food in the game. Folks, when they get hungry, they're going to go and get food, in this case water, but we do get the opportunity for things like coffee makers and vending machines and things like that in the future. So there are other food units that they would potentially be looking into. Food is a little more expensive. It's $3 per unit. So initially, we're just going to do a small order of food. And we'll let that run, and here comes the food truck, Brook Foods. And they'll drop it off, and food as well goes on the shelf. We could also drop it directly on one of the water coolers, and it would fill it up. In fact, you'll notice it says 10, and then we hold it over there, and it now says 60. So he has 60 units, and that is perfect. Okay, another story just came in, so let's pause and see what that story is. Now, this means basically, if you recall, we still have that story hanging out there from before. The second story is in the same location, basically, and we want to click on that separately, and we can assign somebody. But we do want to check the two stories to see if one makes more sense than the other. And neither really does. Interestingly enough, both are for the same reporter this time. This one only has 1 day left on it. This one has 4, so it probably makes sense to maximize our story usage to go ahead and go with this one. The Sounding Rocket has a new publisher. That's us. So sure, let's do some self-promotion here. We will start that story for next week. That will probably do it for stories this week and before the bell rings on Sunday. So let's go ahead and hold down tab. And the bell is going to ring here in just a second. There it is. The faster you click, the faster the bell goes away. I do want to point that out. I think it'll run for like 5 seconds otherwise. So it is Sunday, and the bell is to remind us that today is the day we have to print the paper. And we do have to print the paper, and you'll notice we still have stories being worked. So let's click here and see what this is about. We might have to unpause it to get some numbers in here. So these stories are done. Their circles aren't spinning anymore. So we're good there. This story it's spinning, this story it's spinning. This one, we knew we weren't going to get this one in this week, right? It's still got a day and a half on it. Not a problem. This one we were kind of hoping for, and the good news is there's only 3 hours left, and it's just now 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. We do have until midnight, so we still have 18 hours, and that is why you don't want to immediately print necessarily, and this story should be done right about now. The story is now done. Its circle is not spinning anymore. We are good to go. We can run our paper. Now, we could wait longer. The only main benefit of waiting longer is these guys might come up with new stories that we can get ready for next week. But I'm not going to worry about that today. For today, we are going to just run the paper because we're ready and we have 3 stories, and that's all we're going to get. We're going to come over here to printing. I'm going to click on the rollers, and this is our basic paper interface. Now, this chalkboard flips, and we're not going to worry about the second page for a while. We're only going to worry about this one. This basically shows us how many people are buying our paper based on the story setup we have. A few things to know. The above the fold front page story gets its values tripled, and that's important because as we drop a story in here, we'll see these numbers change. If I take this top story, which only has 1 tag, it'll be multiplied by 3, and that is factored in down here, but you'll notice there's just the 1 tag added, and that is worth 2,500 readers. So because it's tripled, it's 7,500 readers, and there you have it. That's how we figure out how many papers we're selling. Let's see what happens when we put in 3 tags, and you can probably do the math on your own, but to make a long story short, that 2,500 gets multiplied by 9 now, right? 3 times 3 because it's tripled. Lots more readers. Now we could also add this story and we'll get another 2,500 readers just like we would expect. and that would be great. Let's see what happens if we add a story that matches a tag. You'll notice it says plus 2,500, so we should be jumping up to 27,500 this time. Actually, we went up to 30,000. So that bonus tag, oh, you know why? We had 2 tags. So each tag was worth 2,500, and then the match was worth 2,500. That's 7,500 more readers. That is outstanding. That's actually not a bad first week of paper. And then finally, we have the last story that we've kind of already dropped in there once to see what would happen. Yeah, we can just come down here and boom, and our total readership for this first week is going to be 32,500, which means we're going to make $1,300 in net revenue. There are some tricks you can do for stories over here. The stories that are multi-part, like this one was, where we had a few different things we could do at any particular time. If you're really squeezed for trying to get a story out or maybe wanting to match an extra tag, you'll get multiple lines here. You can hit delete to get rid of a part of a story. You're not always entirely certain which tags will get removed when you do that. And in this case, it would just eliminate the story because there's only the one tag and there's only the one piece to it. But when there's multiples, you can get 3 of these where it's sitting here on 3 different lines. And if you just have to have the story, you can clear out part of it and move on. Also, sometimes you'll get bad journalism in the stories. You might want to remove them to get rid of those pieces. We can also hire an editor at some point, though, to kind of do copy proofing and things like that that helps with quality issues. Okay, well, that is it. We're going to go ahead and run the presses. So to do that, we're going to come down here and hit start. And there are a few stats down here. This is how much paper is currently loaded, and I can't remember what this is. Oh, the amount of paper it'll take. So this is going to take 82 sheets of paper to run, and we have 100 in the printer. We also have a ton on our shelves, and that is fine. So this value here, emergency fee, if we were going to run out of paper, it would buy the additional paper on its own, and this is how much it's expecting it would cost. We don't need to worry about that today. To run the presses, we've got this great big handle, and we pull it from start printing. We pull it all the way down, so it'll go to set and then go. And we let go, and we run the press. And we get to see it spin here, and then we'll see it fly through the different printing modules, and there it is, 32,500 papers sold. That is technically a record for us, but in your first week, it won't list it as a record. Records are important, though, because they give you influence points to spend, and we will talk about that in another episode. Actually, I think we might talk about them here, come to think of it. So these are quotes, or these are comments from your readers. A newspaper for the people. This is making me sad. Well, they're talking about that tragic story. They're reading the tragic story. So I guess that's an okay thing. You will get snarky comments when they don't like articles and things like that. It's something you might want to pay a little attention to. And when we add our $1,300 to the $770 we had, this is our current bank. We are going to lose a little here, though, because we have to pay those salaries. And when we come over here, that's where they're calculated and taken out. So there you have it. We made about $900, which that's not bad. When we add another page, these numbers will go way up, and that's really helpful. Okay, so this is the last part of this video, and it talks a little bit about that influence. We'll point that out in a second. But the start of every week, you get this map, and you try to decide which direction you want to spread. This is an important piece of the game, because as you collect these neighborhoods, first of all, you get influence points. But secondly, as you get to buildings, this is our paper to start, doesn't give us anything. But as we get to these other buildings, they have things in them we can buy. So for instance, this Industry City Harbor, this is a very important one. If I click on it, this is where we get additional print modules. And that is this guy down here. And that first new print module, so we can do up to 2 pages right now. If we buy this, we can do 3 pages. If we buy this, we can do 4, 5, and 6. It's going to cost us 16 influence points, and we currently have none. So that's something to consider. We need to earn and spend those influence points on different things. There are other things this can buy, like a big globe, and what the globe does is it gives our telegraphers a +2 buff on their job. That's huge. That's a lot of time spent. That means pardon me. That's a lot of time saved, which means they can do more stories and bring them in for reporters. We have bonuses for the typesetters. We have bonuses for the assemblers. I think this is for the assembler. If not, it should be. I'm pretty sure that's him. But that's what we can see there. There are other kinds of things we can get too. Like if we come up here to Throg's Neck Factory, this is where we can get the elevator. The elevator allows us to move between floors quickly without having to use the stairs. Saves them a lot of time. The elevator actually works extremely well. It is something I am going to build to. In fact, it's one of the first things I want to get to. Always the first one I try to get to, though, is the Industry City Harbor. I think that one's probably most important for my strategy. As you get further out, we have things like the Photo Academy. This is what gives us access to hiring photographers. There's like a graphic workshop. This is what allows us to hire illustrators. There's an ad agency. That's what allows us to hire somebody to do ads for our paper. And an ad works exactly like a story, but you're paid for it. I think that is the highlights of this. There is one other thing to know, though. 3 of these buildings are special buildings. The Empire State Building, this is where the mayor lives. And once you have access to this building, he will give you missions to complete each week. Things like, don't print any crime this week. So you can't print any crime stories, and if you meet that obligation, he'll give you extra money or influence or things like that. Another one is this one here. It's the Mafia Hideout, and it is exactly the same. It's where the Mafia lives, and they will give you stories like, don't print any crime this week, or print crime this week, or print stories about the Mafia this week. The biggest difference here is when you don't meet the mayor's obligation, he just kind of yells some... He's mad. He yells some words at you. He's steamed. When the Mafia doesn't get what they ask for, they get angry. And sometimes, not always, and you will know when you're given the mission, it will tell you what the consequence is. Sometimes they'll send guys to break your legs, is what it comes down to. They'll send out hitmen that come and they bust up your equipment. They'll come in with bats and they beat on the desks and destroy the desks and scare the people that work there, and that drives their comfort level down, so they do a worse job and they work slower, and you don't want that. We do have ways to mitigate that, and we will move towards those. In fact, it's an easy one. The police station allows us to hire a security guard. We can get a security booth, and we can put a security guard in there, and he will fight off the Mafia guys as best he can. He can only take on one at a time generally. Maybe when he gets to a higher level, he can do a little bit better than that. But overall, he does a pretty good job. We will hire him eventually. He's usually my next major hire. I guess I do buy the workbench guy first, the mechanic who fixes things. But then I'll get the security guard. Again, and then finally, the third magic building is this one. This is where the high society folks hang out. And they have good missions that are things like don't print any fake or lies this week, things like that. And if you meet that, they, again, give you influence and money. And those stories tend to be the easiest. It's probably, I mean, what you have is the balance between the Mafia and the mayor is what they kind of work out to be. Also, I don't know, actually, no, this building does not give you any additional stuff. But some of the other things like the Harrison Public Library, this is where we can get a text editor or a graphic editor. It's where we can get some bonuses for like a dictionary for the editor. Actually, these all look like their editor, and you'll notice that is a common theme. Usually a building kind of focuses on something. This focuses on entertainment and comfort. We can here's where the mirror is. We'll want to unlock the mirror. It counters smell. That's a good thing. We can get another painting that we can hang up. It's probably a one-off, like the red apple one we have already. This is where acoustic wallpaper is. There's also Art Deco wallpaper, which probably has prestige. Yeah. So prestige will go up when we use that. And I don't even know what the radio does. Oh, it counters noise. That's important. And it gives prestige. So there you have it. There's chandeliers. They give prestige. There's other food things. There's a popcorn machine. So these are things we would add to our tower to make our employees more comfortable, basically. And finally, the other category I can think of right now are, well, actually, that's one too, come to think of it. But way out here, we can get discounts on plane tickets and things like that. And that is kind of another story. We'll get to that eventually. We'll save those for later, though. I did stumble on this one, though. St. Elizabeth College. This gives us the ability to get traits for folks. And that's important in the long run. You'll notice these cost money as opposed to influence. But it allows us to take an employee and send them to training for a week to gain a trait. And that can be important. And actually, there is one other thing to note. So you got all these groupings of little folks, right? What those represent are stories that you have to print. So for this neighborhood, which is Williamsburg, they want to hear about crime and they want to hear about sports. Now, I don't have to do it at the same time. It doesn't have to be in the same week, but Williamsburg has to be my target when I print these stories for it to count. And when I do, it will lock them out. They'll change color, basically. They'll turn gray. And that represents that their requirement has been met, and when all the requirements get met for a neighborhood, we get influence. We also get subscribers. Subscribers become very important, and subscribers will move around a little bit, but as you lock up neighborhoods with your newspaper, you get more and more subscribers, which means more and more sales, which means more and more money. So that's an important thing. Now, because I like to build towards the Industry City Harbor to get the additional print modules available to me, and then also try to get to the elevator pretty quickly, I'm going to start with this neighborhood right here, and I'm going to say select district. Now next week, assuming I have met one of those two obligations, and we should be able to get a sports story or a crime story this week. That person will light up and it will give me access to the things that they're tied to. So next week I would have the ability to go to this neighborhood or this neighborhood or this neighborhood. I will also have access to the mafia at that point. You don't have to complete the neighborhood in order to move on. You just have to fulfill one of its requirements. So we're going to start with this one as we already selected, and then we're going to say go to the next week by clicking down here. And there we go. I'm going to hit pause. You can see that it is now February of 1930, and we are ready to roll into our next week. One last thing I want to check on. We do have this story sitting out here that hasn't been addressed. This reporter is carrying their report back. Let's go ahead and hold down tab and stop, and we're going to have Elaine report on that story and get a good start there. And then I am going to end this episode, and we'll pick up at this point for our next episode. Just see how it kind of plays out for that first week and see maybe what happens with reaching those neighborhood goals. Oh, as you can see right now, this means that I have a story in the works that matches this obligation, or not obligation, but request, I guess, maybe a better way to look at it. Williamsburg wants crime and sports stories, and I have a sports story in the works, so I get this folder. Now, I have to print the story in order for it to get met. But for now, what this is indicating is I probably will have the ability to print the sports story. I'd like to go ahead and close the neighborhood out completely because I'd rather not have to come back and ever visit it again if I don't have to. But if I can't, at least it will give me access to the next set of neighborhoods. All right, there we have it. And I want to thank you for following along. I'm going to try to keep this one going in a little bit better pacing than the last time I did this, so that we keep ahead of those major changes in the game and kind of have some fun with it and see how it plays out. So thanks for your time, and until next time, fair travels.